Mr. Dan Wellman has been our MC today and has done an awesome job, but he was my go-to for education. That was just my go-to contact. I knew his number by heart, and I think it's really important to know the people within your community. Briefly, I want to mention the importance of peer support. So we provide clinical counseling services, like I mentioned, in individual, group, and family realms of counseling. We really believe in the importance of peer-to-peer counseling. Vet Center started off as being a peer-to-peer counseling service. In Springfield, just outside of Springfield, I should say, it's actually in Jacksonville, there's a peer-to-peer group called Vet to Vet. They meet once a week on Thursdays. They do a great job of getting the word out, of providing support for the men and women that they meet up with. A couple other peer support groups. I found a great research article about Vets for Vets. It was a program established in 2004. And what they do is they do peer support weekend retreats that are very intensive, and their goal is to heal from the psychological wounds of war. And they believe that the peer support is incredibly important because it provides that relationship based on shared experiences to foster understanding, trustworthiness, and safety in helping the relationships develop. And to become a leader in this specific program, Vets for Vets, they receive about 40 hours of classroom training. They co-facilitate several retreats on their own, and then they actually step forward. And the Vet Center or the VA is not specifically endorsing these events, but I just wanted to get the word out there that these peer-to-peer groups, like the Team Red, White, and Blue, as discussed earlier, they're really valuable, and there's lots of opportunities within our community. Other peer-to-peer programs, the Vet Center has referred several people to Project Odyssey. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that at all, but it does some outdoors type of activities, really great programs that are sometimes about a week long. And that specific program is free to the veteran. It's coordinated with them to figure out how they get out there, and then the entire week event is planned. Other ones are Operation Warrior Support, Warrior to Warrior, Team River Runner. I had Team Red, White, and Blue on here, so it was great to hear from a representative of them, and Faces of America's Brave. So we just wanted to place an important value that although we're providing a clinical service to veterans, returning veterans and their families, we also really believe in the power of peer-to-peer groups. So now I'm turning it back over to Joe Lasky.
Get this thing off Oompa Loompa setting. There we go. Is it better? Everybody hear me? Excellent. All right, what I'm going to talk about now is go into just a little bit more about veterans and the strengths they bring into the classroom and how they are, are non-traditional student. I know that's kind of been the theme of today, but sitting here and listening to all the presentations, I think I've heard PTSD mentioned, or PTS, if you want to call it that, mentioned more times than I can count on both hands. And which is good, and we need to be aware of that. But I think more importantly, we need to be focused on the qualities and the benefits veterans do bring to the classroom, and how we, as facilitators and clinicians, educators, administration, can empower them and not just help them survive college, but thrive in college, because they are an asset. So my next little slide's a little mislabel. I think it should say not your average college student, but your above average college student. Nothing against traditional students, I'm not saying any worse, but you can't argue against somebody that has those, that level of experience traveling around the world, hopefully those life skills learned while in military service, and what they can bring to the classroom. Just kind of, basic general information, they're non-traditional students. They may have more responsibilities, spouses, kids, military duties if they're still in the Guard or reserves, different life experiences, military training, deployments, and etc. And they may be struggling with the effects of deployments, which I think we've talked about that quite a bit. Readjustment time can be difficult. I don't know how many times I've had 22, 23, 24-year-old veterans come into our office and just, complain about their freshman poli-sci 101 class and how, they just can't relate to anybody. And I can sit there and I can, okay, yep, I understand that. Or, I can try to empower them and say, well, okay, if they don't have those experiences and you do, why aren't you participate more? Why aren't you sharing that knowledge base you have with them? Encourage them to, break out of their shells, much like Billy Madison did. Role model for veterans, that guy. Points to consider. And these are just kind of generalized things. This is, I mean, veterans, obviously, I think you know and understand this, but for the administrators, if you're new to working with veterans, just kind of things to keep in the back of your head. We've been at war for almost 10 years on two fronts. A lot of veterans have done multiple war zone deployments or multiple deployments to the same war zone. Unprecedented use of Guard and Reserve forces. I think that's very key because, you know, the Guard and Reserves especially, you know, a lot of students join that because they do want to go to school. And they know that after a year of service in the Guard, their eligibility for something like the Illinois Guard Grant will pay for free tuition. What they don't know is that then the Guard's already decided that they're going to deploy to Afghanistan, so they may get 2 semesters of college in, spend the next 12 months overseas, and then have to come back and start over. Concept of military and veterans culture, signature injuries, PTSD, TBI, and amputations, concept of moral injury, and the high rates of suicide. And finally, college tuition can be a major reason for joining the military. The top 3 there, or the middle 3 there, the signature injuries, concept of moral injury, high rates of suicide, you know, as administrators, you know, faculty members in a college campus, you know, that right there is your bare bones knowledge base. And we focus on that. You know, I remember when I was at SIU, if I walked outside the vet center there was pamphlets on, hey, if you're feeling suicidal, call this number. Or if you need to seek help, here's the VA's PTSD clinic. Or, you know, here's another 1-800 number for these things. And that's great. But once again, all we're doing there is the bare minimum and creating that safety blanket for the veterans. That's not empowering. That's just surviving. We want to teach them to thrive. We want to be a place for veterans to come and take full advantage of that college experience. And to be part of that, I think we need to understand the strengths veterans bring to the classrooms, and more importantly, what our colleges or universities have that, you know, play into those strengths. So you have ahead of you a very, very difficult job, man. I don't envy you. But looking into some of the strengths, resiliency, a global perspective, job experience, leadership, and maturity. It's 5 very basic and generic sounding strengths. I know earlier we talked about, you know, the Army values and leaderships and how, you know, veterans, you know, do their service, they come out with these great things. And it sounds good on paper, but in reality, you actually need to sit down with these veterans and find out what brought them to your college and university. Because if they're coming there for an engineering degree, it doesn't do you really too much good to say, well, you should join the Veterans Club. Yeah, that helps. It helps them associate with veterans, but you also need to have a point of contact within that engineering club or the engineering fraternity or sorority and put them in contact with that. Don't just give them a number, say, yeah, I know Mike Smith, the president of the engineering club. You know, if you're really interested in engineering, get to know this person, talk to them. And now you're helping them actually, you know, take full advantage of that college experience, and you're building off those strengths. Because one thing I learned is that a lot of these clubs, you know, they're managed by these, you know, 19, 20, 21-year-olds who only have the college experience. If you can bring a veteran who's 23, 24, has been in charge of real-world situations and involve them in those registered student organizations, it does nothing but strengthen them. It gives them that outside perspective. It makes the veteran feel more a part of their university, and it gives that club the ability to grow in ways that, you know, maybe the younger kids can't necessarily see or deal with. Okay, once again, we've talked a lot about PTSD or PTS, depending on how you want to define it today. Research has shown that there is a flip side to that. And this is another thing I feel if you're going to work in administration or with veterans, you need to educate yourself on and know. If a veteran's going to come in and talk to your office and, you know, you're just going to tell them about the suicide hotline and where to get treatment and all this stuff, that's great, and a good job of, you know, combating the negative effects of their service. But what are you doing to build up their positive? You know, what are you doing to build on their strengths? So people who go through traumatic events have often said they have things like a positive change after a crisis or traumatic event could be a new sense of opportunity. You know, they're at your college or university for a reason, not just because it's free because of their services. Find out why. See if anything that happened overseas or in their service has played into that. For me personally, when I got out, I knew I was going to go to college to some extent, but I didn't have an idea. Within 2 weeks of being out and running into various people within the Veterans Service Organization community, I knew what I was going to do because they were awful at their jobs. And I was like, if this is what people are getting out, you know, in 2006 are having to deal with when talking to other people in the community, I can do this better and I want to do this better. And then as I started to do this, I realized that, that's maybe what started me down the road, but what kept me going in school and what inspired me was meeting the people actually vested in their job and who actually cared to listen to me and encourage me to follow my goals and pursue them. So, bad experiences, they're going to be out there, but help be the heart of that veteran is a good experience. All right, because we want to listen, we want to learn. So looking at things like stronger, better defined relationships. Going overseas, a lot of these veterans are coming back with families, and we talk about that in necessarily a negative, like how are they going to manage school and a kid? Well, ask their spouse how they managed to run a family while the other one was gone on the other side of the world for 12 months. All right, if they managed it then, they can manage it now. Find out what relationships are important to them and encourage them to utilize that to deal with the stresses of college. Better understanding of your own strengths. Once again, challenge your veterans to know themselves. Don't just teach them to survive in college, push them to thrive. If they were in charge of, if they got out as an E5, E6, Sergeant, NCO type in the Army, or Army, Marines, or anything, they've been in charge of people before. Get them involved in those RSOs. Have them be leaders within their college or program. Greater appreciation for life. Once again, coming through a traumatic event and, being close to losing it or losing friends and family, it can give you a better focus and, work with them on that. Talk to them about it. Keep them focused on what's important to them now after they've served. And then changing their belief system. Once again, coming down to what's important and also the spiritual, and I don't want to get on a religious topic, but spiritual religion was get them involved in the local community. Almost every college or university has multiple churches and religious organizations around it. Get to know who these people are. And once again, don't just give your veterans a telephone number. Give them, a point of contact. Hey, this is a person. So that's really all I've got to say about strengths veterans bring to the classroom and post-traumatic growth. I know it's not a lot of information. And that's kind of the problem with today is if you get on the Google machine or CNN or anything and you look up veterans, almost always what comes up is suicide rates and PTSD. But if you look a little farther, if you look into the next level, you'll find things like post-traumatic growth. You'll find the resiliency that veterans bring to the classroom. And that's what if I was in your position, I would focus on. Because now you're teaching, like I said, veterans not just to survive, but to thrive in college.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about outreach again. When I'm out doing different events and whatnot, visiting different colleges or talking to friends and families and my family members, what's outreach? Well, it's kind of like recruiting. It's kind of like the same thing that happened right before I went in. You had the recruiter sign me up, let me know what I was going to be expecting and whatnot and kind of lead me down the path so I could go into the military. Well, that's not really doing it too much justice, so I went ahead and looked it up. Outreach is defined as the activity or process of bringing information or services to people and the extending of services to the assistance beyond current or unusual limits. And basically for us as the Vet Center, it's basically bringing the services to them. It's both socially, psychologically, meeting them on their grounds, and that's always been the premise, is that we go to them because they're not always going to come into the Vet Center. I know our motto is walk on in, boots on the ground, this type of thing, all these fancy terminology, but I think that going to the colleges is really a central focal point for the Mobile Vet Center and classes and education and stuff and whatnot, to be able to go and educate them and show the veterans and the family members and the administration and faculty that we care enough to drive hours on end to different campuses all across the state of Illinois and, provide 2 days of services and let it be a self-sustaining office, if you will. I'm not going to talk too much about the Mobile Vet Center itself because I did see a lot of familiar faces here. Looks like they went over to the other classroom, but I still do see some in this class here today. And if I haven't seen you yet, then I hope to see you in the future. But basically, it's an RV looking machine that it's self-sustaining. You set up shop, and I can do anything. We can do anything and everything that we can at the Brick and Mortar Vet Center. I provide the technical support, and then we bring a counselor along with us, and then do some educating in the classes to the faculty. There's a lot of referrals to the VA healthcare, your local veteran service officer. The GI Bill is a big question. So we have the communications on board to help them do that. I'm not going to go too far into that. As far as the MVC College Sweep, this is just kind of a term that we coined. It's basically, we were in collaboration with the Illinois Community College Board, which was mentioned this morning, ICBB. It started in the fall of 11 and started all the way down south in the southern tip of Illinois, and it's still going on, well, till tomorrow and then Thursday and then till the end of the spring semester. So it's been all week, every week, normally about two schools a week, and I do exactly everything that I just mentioned, set up shop and provide services out on the road. Like I said, it was set up mostly to do the junior colleges or community schools, but it has graduated into the bigger universities, Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, University of Illinois, Champaign, UIS there in Springfield, right next door to us. But we do good work. The brief synopsis of the movement is basically the school provides a focal point for us. Some of the smaller towns might only have about 20,000 people, but it will have a community college in it that will have your younger veterans, and they're most likely going to go to the community colleges first because they might have to maybe go back and do remedial classes or whatever, or that might just be a good stepping stone before they step back in to the university system. How to request an MVC. If you want to come back and talk to me later, I spoke to a lot of people out on the break. It's not on the slide. I have a phone number at the office if you want to write it down. It's 217-492-4955, or you can email me at john.miser@va.gov. Like I said, just stop back there and I'll get you a brochure, and that's basically all you have to do is say, hey, I'm from such and such college. I want you to come for, hey, we're having a job fair on this day. We're having a Veterans Appreciation Day. Anything, welcome back parade type thing. Anything that's going to draw a high population of veterans are willing to attend. More on the college outreach. Why? Why do we go to the colleges? Well, basically because the veterans in Illinois are using their benefits. We have the Illinois Veterans Grant. It's one of the few states that has a state grant like that, the Illinois Guard Grant. Montgomery GI Bill is still around, post 9/11 GI Bill. You got the VOC Rehab, VRAP. The benefits go on and on. I mean, there's no reason that a veteran should not succeed in the school system and get at least associate's degree all the way up to maybe a master's degree or a doctorate if they really push the envelope. Basically, like I said earlier, it's a central location. It's going to be in town. The college does a lot of PR for us. They'll put it out in the newspaper, do a news blast. They'll send an email out to all the students. They'll get a hold of it. They'll say, hey, I heard you're going to be on campus today. I had a question about this. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be about vet center services, but that's okay. We don't expect it to always be about needing counseling. Like we said, it just might be something basic, readjustment. Well, I'm having a hard time getting my GI Bill. Well, that's frustrating. That's normal readjustment. I'm relying on my monthly stipend. Things of that nature. I'm waiting on a claim to come through and stuff like this. Who do I talk to? They just need answers, and that's why we're there. A big movement I've seen, the schools, they're pushing towards the student support centers, which is very big, and it's kind of an exclusive place for the veterans to go, get online, do their homework, and this essentially will be part of their veterans club, an extension of their veterans club, where they're going to meet each other and build on that camaraderie and basically have somebody to talk to, so that way they have something in common. I really enjoy going to the colleges that have a well-organized veterans resource center. I know Kathy mentioned that at Western. It's very nice. I think that's about all I have. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hillary.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Not going to take very long, so we have plenty of time for questions at the end here. But I'm going to talk briefly about other health concerns that we haven't addressed yet and how to access VA resources. So as I said, I'm the Assistant Chief of Social Work at the VA in Danville. But in my prior job, I was the program manager for returning combat veterans from OEF. Our current program manager would be here today, but she had a baby 3 weeks ago, so we weren't going to make her come here today. I'll talk about her and how to contact her in a little bit. But what I'm first going to talk about is traumatic brain injury that we've heard a couple times today. Causes of traumatic brain injury, not just traumatic brain injury, but the overall number one cause of injuries in our current conflicts is from blasts in one shape or form. So traumatic brain injury can be caused by a compressed air blast wave being the cause, which basically is just all those fluid and air-filled organs being impacted by that blast wave coming at the service member. Then the other way is that if a service member is propelled, through the air and hit up against something, hit their head on something, that's another way a brain injury can occur. And then there's all these other ways too, collapsed structures, falling debris, any way you could get your head bumped. If people can imagine what your head looks like and your skull inside, or your brain inside your skull's not smooth on the inside, and any jostle that moves your brain, it could bump up against different things on the inside of your skull. When it moves back and forth, you can not only have energy or impact on the back of your brain, but also the front. So you can see, depending on the type of cause that caused the injury, the type of impact it's going to have on the person. IEDs can contain a lot of substances. They're dirty bombs, basically. Inside those improvised explosive devices can be things like nails, screws, syringes with bad stuff on them. Lots of different things in there that can penetrate the head and cause a brain injury. So of all those injuries at Walter Reed, 60% of those injuries were from blast injuries. 60% of the blast injuries at Walter Reed had a traumatic brain injury. And that can be, like I said, penetrating or a closed head injury, which is more of the silent wound or the invisible wound, because you're not going to see. They're going to look okay from just standing in a room with them, but there can be some serious problems going on inside their brain. The symptoms of traumatic brain injury, I've just listed them here, but if you read through some of those, you can see how being in a classroom can impose some challenges. And you can also but as Tim talked about, a lot of the symptoms overlap with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. And so it's not always the easiest to determine what's causing what, which impacts the type of treatment we're going to try and get for that person. PTSD and traumatic brain injury, the teams that work on those work very closely together, the treatment teams that assist those veterans. They have some overlap in the team members that are going to work with those veterans, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Some of the other injuries that we see are just other wounds, shrapnel wounds, other burns, those type things, orthopedic injuries. Those, I would say, are number one complaints of returning service members. This is just my personal experience of talking to veterans when they come back, is some sort of musculoskeletal problem. Back pain, knee pain, ankle pain, hip pain, whatever sort of pain in your joints. That's our number one complaint, at least in my opinion. And as Tim said, the weight that they carry, sitting in one position for a very long time, not having good support, those type things. We see a lot of that. Some fractures, some other psychiatric issues that we see, some nerve injuries, lung injuries, infections. There's lots of different bugs over there that we don't have here that in the beginning we saw a lot more of than I would say we do now. But there are a lot of infections, and then pain from those musculoskeletal concerns or any of the other things I've talked about. Pain is a major issue that we try and address as much as we can to help them succeed in anything that they wish to do. Amputations, shrapnel injuries, vision loss, hearing loss, and spinal cord injury. With the improvements in body armor as well as battle site and acute trauma care in the field, more and more people are surviving things now than they wouldn't have survived in previous conflicts. So we see a new complex patterns of injuries, and we've had to adjust how we treat veterans based on that. So treatment for someone with multiple injuries is what we call polytrauma. So polytrauma is 2 or more life-threatening traumatic injuries. This treatment that I'm talking about here are all sorts of things that could be done for someone with polytraumatic injuries. So all those different referrals to different rehab medicines. We do a lot of neuropsych evaluations, which in the classroom setting can really benefit in helping us find assistive devices for veterans that are going into the classroom setting. Just because you have a brain injury doesn't mean you can't go to school and you can't be effective in doing whatever you wish to do. We just have to find ways to assist them in learning different ways to be successful at whatever it is that they wish to accomplish through school. Accessing care. So I could talk about eligibility for VA services for an hour, probably. I think I've done it for an hour before. Eligibility is complex, but what you need, only thing if I take anything out of today, is if a veteran served in Iraq, Afghanistan, if they have that Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, served in a combat zone or a conflict area, they're going to be eligible for VA care for those first 5 years after they get back. That's their window to get into the VA system. And it's free care. Anything that they need from the VA in those first 5 years after they get discharged from the military, once they get their DD-214, is going to be free for combat-related conditions. That doesn't mean that they can't come in and be seen for anything else. They can. If they get the flu and want to come to the VA rather than the Student Health Center, they can do that. They just may have a copayment based off their income. The highest copayment we have, though, is $15 for a regular primary care visit. Specialty visits can be up to $50, and medications are $8 per month per prescription. But if the veteran has no income, that's going to be null. They're not going to have copayments for that. Basically, a veteran can walk into any VA facility to get the application for eligibility for VA healthcare, or they can go online to www.va.gov to download what we call a 1010EC. There'll be instructions online that you could look this up, so don't worry about remembering this, but just know that va.gov website is going to give you basically every VA facility within our country, all the vet centers, contact information, it's all there. Once enrolled, the veteran is scheduled for a primary care appointment if they want to do that. So if they want to get established with the VA, that's the first step. The primary care person will then refer them to whatever sort of full range of services they need. If they need a chiropractor, we're one VA that has a chiropractor, so we're very lucky in that matter. There's, the full range of services. I've listed the phone numbers for each of the VAs within Illinois, but as I said, these are all available on that va.gov website. These are the main numbers, and you can ask for whoever you wish. Eligibility would be your first step, unless you're an OEF-OIF veteran. Each VA has an OEF-OIF OND care management team. At minimum, they have an OEF-OIF program manager. This staff assists veterans with enrollment, referring to the proper care that they need, working with families, and establishing healthcare goals. For any OEF-OIF veteran, I would suggest this be your first stop. This is the person that you would refer them to if they need assistance, because they're going to be able to expedite that enrollment process, get them in for primary care services as soon as they can, and also possibly if we know there's going to be specialty services they need, get those scheduled for them as well. So I've listed all the OEF, OIF program managers within the state of Illinois. If you see yours, you could write it down. Otherwise, you would be able to call the main number for the VA and just ask for the program manager for that. Brittany Tabaris is ours for Danville. So for those of you in central Illinois, that would be the person you would contact for OEF, OIF services. I've just listed some of the things that VAs are able to do, but then I realized I forgot a few. What I want to point out is for mental health services, not only can we do inpatient care and outpatient care, but residential care, and I think Christine mentioned this. Sometimes veterans need a little more treatment than what you can just get as an outpatient, but they don't need that highly intense locked structure of an inpatient psychiatric unit. Residential programs are good for those veterans that need a little more time. Most of them run 90 days to 180 days, depending on the type of treatment that they need. They are usually specific for certain issues that the veteran might be having. There's residential care for PTSD, substance abuse. There's some homeless domiciliaries and other residential care too. And a mix of some. There's some residential that will do all of those that I've discussed. We at RVA have just started PAIRS training, and I can't remember what the acronym means, but it's basically a couples workshop. It's for OEF, OIF veterans and their significant other, and it's whatever that veteran, they don't have to be married, nothing. It's whatever that veteran feels their significant other is, to just do enhancement, couples enhancement is what that PAIRS training is. At RVA, there's folks in the PTSD clinic that are contacts, as well as the OEF, OIF clinic that are contacts for that. The VAs are really ramping up their telehealth services. So if your university or college is near a outpatient clinic, but the main VA is somewhere else. So if you're in Bloomington, you may get care at Peoria, at the Peoria Clinic. They may not have cardiology services available. Some services are available via telehealth, whether that be in the veteran's home. We have a PTSD, I don't know what it's called, app, I guess, where a veteran has a thing hooked up to their internet or their phone line in their home, and it asks them questions, and it looks at how well they're doing with their symptom management of their PTSD. And then a clinician in our PTSD clinic looks at that daily and can provide resources or assist with coping mechanisms for that veteran and say, hey, I think you need to come in. We're seeing a difference in how things are going for you. Why don't we get you in for an appointment? But we also do, if there isn't a counselor on staff at that CBOC, that outpatient clinic that day, maybe someone called in sick, but it's a crisis, they can meet with the worker in Danville and go through what they need to talk with and do an assessment that way so that they can still be seen. So this is not courtesy of me, this is courtesy of Joe. Before I open it up for questions or comments, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that we kind of forgot. One is the crisis line. The National Crisis Line, you have some cards with the crisis line number. It's 1-800-273-TALK, and then you can press 1 for veterans, and that gets directly linked to our Canandaigua, New York crisis line for assistance. There's brochures in the back for the PTSD clinic that Tim brought with us. I'm so glad Joe talked about strengths, because I think that's the one thing I want people to take off of, is that veterans can make a huge impact on whatever it is that we're doing. And with all the media that comes up about the recent shooting and things like that. I want people to remember that PTSD does not equal violence. Just because someone has PTSD does not mean that they're going to be violent or have any sort of violent behaviors. So I just want people to remember that. And to remember that not everybody that gets deployed is going to have PTSD or a brain injury. Everybody's impacted by deployments differently, and not a vast majority, but a lot of veterans come back and they have an adjustment period. Everybody has an adjustment period to get back in the swing of things in their civilian life. But they don't all have PTSD, and we don't want to make that assumption that everyone that's having some sort of problem in the classroom is having PTSD, if that makes sense. And I think that's it. So now we'll open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Me being a student, right when I first got back, I'm sure that there was probably some teachers that might have noticed some things, and somehow they found out one way or another, and I do not know how, that I was a veteran, and they maybe wanted to approach me about stuff like that. But it was one of my professors in particular that just brought me in his office and wanted to know, because he was a vet too. It could be something as simple as just maybe asking them if you do know. I mean, the certain telltale signs of them wearing their camouflage backpacks or, their combat boots and stuff like that. I mean, just ask them a little bit, maybe after class, how's things going, or I don't know. Just don't assume, and maybe pay a little bit more attention to them, but in a positive manner.
I was going to say, too, to make it individual, in that if you see something with one of your veteran students, and is to take them aside and make sure it's an individual discussion, but also they could be having something going on in their personal life, and just ask them, open up some of those open-ended questions to get them talking maybe, and maybe it's they have a sick family member or something along those lines that could be impacting them as well. And so just to make it very individualized and private, because we don't want to make them feel like this is something, that they have to talk about if they don't want to. But
Yeah. Some veterans had suggested that it would be nice if teachers would have them, every student, starting like the first day of class, fill out a card. Just an index card on who they are, had they served in the military, interests, et cetera, et cetera. So that way it's kept private, but then that teacher has an idea and might be able to notice things. And two, a lot of veterans have suggested that it would be really nice if on every campus there was a veterans organization of some sort where they can go, where they can play, where they can hang out, where they can talk with other guys, because they are probably their best therapy right there. And if there's a veterans service rep or advocate on campus, it's nice for them to know where that's at as well too.
Yeah, just to kind of build more off what you're saying, 2 points, and to go off what Tim was saying. You're never going to go wrong with just giving them the basic information of, hey, here's the crisis line, the VA, there's options out there. But at the same time, if a veteran walks in, there's a difference between relaying that information to a veteran and them identifying themselves as a combat veteran and you changing the way you treat them. And that's something I know I've experienced and other veterans have experienced, where it's, you walk in, you're having a normal conversation with a professor, a faculty member, or administrator, and, once they hear, oh, you've deployed 3 or 4 times, you've done this, suddenly, they start treating you with kid gloves, and you can just tell there's a different feeling in the room. So, all that stuff, the suicide, that's great information to have out there, but, unless they come to you with a problem, don't act like the only reason why they're coming to you is with a problem. And then on the same lines, have them be proactive in reaching out to their professors and, things about like, hey, a lot of things veterans do is sit in the back of class. Maybe they don't want to be engaged in conversations, and stuff. Is that really an issue? No. And you know what's going to help it not be? Writing a letter to their professor before they start class and saying, hey, just so you know, I'm comfortable sitting in the back. It's just my coping mechanism helping with this. I'd appreciate it if you'd allow me to do this. And then day one, they walk in, the professor doesn't make an issue of it. They don't feel left out. It just helps us. So, any sort of chance for them to communicate with their faculty and the people they're with is gonna help, strengthen their relationship with the university and school.
I have something very special to present to some people who are sitting up there. I want to thank you very much for your services that you've provided, not only for myself over the last 20 years for my post-traumatic stress disorder issues, but also for the fact that I have personally taken my clients to your facility, and you have been very responsive and very helpful to them, and I deeply appreciate that. I'm director of the Illinois Veterans Advocacy Center in Springfield, and the Vet Center is one of the resources that I count on for my clients. And you people deserve a lot of respect and a lot of congratulations for the success that you've done for the veterans in our area. Also, the Danville VA facility has been very helpful, and I've referred several of my clients to them. And as a resource in combination, I think we're damn lucky to have it. And because I remember the bad old days. And fortunately, very fortunately, I want to make sure you understand how much the veterans do appreciate the availability of the services. And I personally thank you very much. Without your services, I wouldn't be able or capable to do the outreach that I do for my fellow veterans. It was a very, very long journey for myself personally. And my clients have told me many times how much they have been helped by your services. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing. Nationally, what we're seeing, and for those of you that can refer to us or to the Vet Center or any PTSD treatment facility, we're seeing, we think 30% of those from the present war that probably actually really need to be in being seen. Not unlike what we saw from previous wars. So if you can, please refer, just call any of us when we'll get them in quick.
Anybody else? My final thing I just want to hit on is something I always tell any veteran comes into my office for the first time, and it's just, I know about everybody up here, I assume their philosophy too, and hopefully you can take it with you back to your jobs, is I'm trying to work myself out of a job with them. I don't want, they may be the nicest person in the world and I may like them, but I don't want them coming to my office every week for the next 5 years. I want to give them the coping skills and tools to get through life. And you as the administrators and faculty members of the college should be giving them the tools and coping skills to get through college and to help them thrive. So, if you treat it like that and you just focus on empowering these veterans, you're going to find your jobs real easy, because a lot of veterans are going to take to that. They don't necessarily want to have their hand held through the college experience. They just want to be able to have somebody they can go to and know they're going to, they know they're going to listen to them, and they know they're going to take the time to answer their questions. And a lot of times it's just as simple as that.
All right, I'd like to thank our partners from the VA for coming up here. We appreciate it. Thank you. I do know that Richard Tapia from the Illinois Board of Higher Education plans on making some closing remarks. They're finishing up their session. They're going to come back over here. There are evaluations, so if you haven't had a chance to fill those out, we'd really like to get your feedback. I did put a box on the table outside, so if you could maybe drop the evaluations in there, that'd be much appreciated. We got to know how to make this session better in the future, the conference better, and that way we can better help our veterans who are ultimately who we're trying to help. So thank you. Thank you. And so we just hold a few minutes, and I'll see if I can get Richard and the other group over here. They're in heated discussion about money, which is always very stressful. And wrap up the conference. So we'll get going, or? Let's start a movie. Mm-hmm. Is anybody from the VA still here? Vet Center? Did they leave already? After this is over, somebody can get a hold of me and explain this slide to me. I'm having difficulty with it. This pancake on top of the bunny's head.
It must be a mental condition.
It's over the top of me, so. Tell me when you're ready. All right, let's go ahead and get this started. Maybe people hear some voices will come on in. Really, it's my honor to introduce the next gentleman, who I would say is the brain trust behind the whole conference, the spearhead, the guy that's kept us all together. It's Richard Tapia, Associate Director of Diversity and Outreach at the Illinois Board of Higher Education. Richard is a U.S. Navy veteran. He served in Vietnam with the Navy Seabees. And I'm going to read this straight from the conference bios here. CBMU 302 NAVCAT 11-14. I'm an Army vet. I have no idea what that means. You'll have to explain that, Richard.
A lot of numbers.
Interestingly, Richard also served in the Peace Corps from 1984 to 86, so he is definitely a person dedicated to service. And with that, Richard's going to make some closing remarks. Thanks, Richard.
Well, for those of you that are left, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time to come here to see how we can better serve veterans. I also want to thank ISU for the facility, for all their help in making this happen. And I hope that the drive here in the morning wasn't too treacherous. I also want to give thanks, too, for the planning committee, because it took us several months to put this thing together. And we did it with full input of veteran students. But as I was talking with Dan, one thing we realized that we didn't have any students up here. That's one thing we missed. So next year, you're going to see veteran students do panel presentations. Oh, I'm sorry. Kathy had a veteran student, but we wanted to have more. You were also given some evaluation sheets. Please make those out, because what you put on there, we take those very seriously, and we will plan next year's conference around a lot of those comments. Everything that you liked and everything that you didn't like, how we could improve this. And so, again, I want to give thanks to everyone who came, the planning committee, the university, our executive director from Illinois Board of Higher Education. He's new, because he gave us full support. So if no one has any questions or anything else, we'll end the conference here, and please drive home safely, and hope to see you again next year. Okay? Thank you.